Hello. Hello, hello. Hi, everybody.
Hey folks,
Welcome in.
please let us know where you're coming in from. Let us know, and if you're part of an Indivisible group, let us know that too.
See who's first in the chat.
We got the emojis already.
I got the emojis. Got the up. Okay, let's see. Here we go.
That's Eric.
Dallas.
Dallas made it.
Massachusetts, NASA, Florida, Ann Arbor, Ferndale, Michigan Fighting 9.
Love
Ferndale
Michigan Fighting Nine.
Rochester, Charlottesville, Newton, Massachusetts, Minneapolis, Bridgeport. Oh, oh my goodness, there's so many. Georgetown, Massachusetts, Nevada City,
We got
California.
Knoxville in the house, Reno. Ooh, I used to go to Baton Rouge all the time for the holidays.
Newton, Massachusetts, Tempe, Prescott, Indivisible, our friends in
Our friends,
Prescott.
I've been to Prescott multiple times. I love the Prescott groups.
Who don't know, Prescott Indivisible is like a little bit legendary in the Indivisible movement. They've been holding it down for a long time out there. Let's see, Girdwood, Alaska. No, Girdwood. Yes,
Alaska,
Girdwood.
AK.
It's like Alabama. Las Positas, New Mexico, Tacoma, Washington, Wolcott, Vermont, Cherry Valley, New York, Odenton, Maryland. Can you feel
Can
the
you
shift?
feel the shift?
Hawaii, Seattle, Shoreline, Washington, Mendocino Coast, Grand Blanc, Michigan, Maynard, Massachusetts, Whidbey Island, Washington.
There are a lot of folks here. I believe there are more folks here who have registered before, and that's what we say every week. And I know it sounds like we just say that every week and it's part of a script, but it's not. Leah, should we get into it? Because we're going to have a lot of questions. There are a lot of things to cover, y'all, because this was not a slow news week. Start with introductions. I'm Ezra.
I'm Leah.
And we're the co-founders of Indivisible. We are here in, this is Leah's office. She did all the background, but we squinched together in our house here for these What's the Plans weekly because we want to talk about how we build a Democratic Party that fights back. We want to talk about how we fight back against this regime effectively to protect our democracy, to protect our neighbors, to protect each other. That's what this is all about. And we call it What's the Plan because while we all like to talk about the news of the day, we have a bias for action. Like that's what we want to do. We want to understand, yes, what's going on, but what do we do about it and what do we do about it together? And that's why we join here to talk about practically how do we confront the newest shit that is thrown our way this week, which is what the last several weeks have been. And we always figure it out. We figure out what we can do together to make things a little bit better. Leah, do you want to talk about how these meetings run?
Sure. All right. So, folks, you are joining What's the Plan? We are going to go over everything that is currently happening as fast as we can. It's going to be mostly Q&A. We'll do a quick opening monologue at the top. Today, we're going to talk about the Epstein files latest, and we're going to talk about the shutdown surrender and where we're going from that.
Yep.
If you've got questions, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You can upvote the questions you most want to see answered. We're going to be taking them mostly from the top with an eye towards trying to make sure we've got a range of different questions in there. This is going to be recorded. It will be sent out to everyone who registered. We will post links in the chat as we go along. We will also follow up with those. So if you miss them because the chat is going too fast, it has happened. You will get those. Do not panic.
I'm just noting people who are have been here a lot are saying I can hear Leah just fine, which is good. This is improvement. We have implemented a very technologically savvy solution, which is putting the mic nearer to Leah and further from me.
That's right. It's working. It's working. Yeah. And then the final thing, we have an incredibly lively chat box. We love that about these calls. There is nothing like the feeling of thousands of people working it through in real time. Also, sometimes it can get a little bit messy. We are talking about really hard stuff. We're talking about really personally meaningful stuff for a lot of folks on this call. It is natural to have strong feelings. We ask that we treat each other with respect and engage constructively. We are going to have differences about strategy sometimes. We're going to have differences about tactics. That's okay. But we treat each other with respect. That is foundational to our ability to organize together.
Speaking of respect, let's show some respect for the new Indivisible group leaders from all over the country. As folks know, our unit of activism is the group. This is our theory about how do you actually build and wield power. It's at the local level. That's how we do it. There are about 2,700 or so active local Indivisible groups now all around the country, which is awesome. And even more awesome, we continue to grow. There are new Indivisible groups every single week. and I'm going to celebrate some of them. One, I try to just keep it to one per state normally, all, but this really kind of knocked my socks off. In the same week, there were two new Alaska Indivisible groups. We've got Jacqueline with Indivisible Soldatna, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, and Victoria with Sitka Indivisible in Sitka, Alaska. And I thought, well, surely Jacqueline and Victoria know each other. They're probably next door neighbors or something. That you can go from Soldatna to Sitka with maybe 8 hours of plane travel and car travel. It's just on opposite sides of the state, forming in the exact same week. I just love that. Moving on, Daniel from Jefferson County Indivisible. Show Daniel some love in the chat and with your emojis. That's in Jefferson County, Georgia. In North Carolina, we've got Tina with one Davidson Indivisible in Thomasville, North Carolina. Welcome, Tina, to the movement. Welcome, Thomasville, to the movement. Laura with Montclair Indivisible in Montclair, New Jersey. Carol with Fallon Indivisible in Fallon, Nevada. That's Nevada, not Nevada. I've been corrected on that many times. Nevada, for those who are paying attention. That's how you know you know. Robert with Sandusky County Indivisible in Ohio. That's Clyde, Ohio. Wendy with Eastlandia Indivisible in Portland, Oregon. Is that a play on Portlandia? If it's not, if so, I love it, and regardless, I love it. Wendy, welcome to the movement. Eastlandia Indivisible, welcome to the movement. Here is our third indivisible group, our third indivisible Paris. Not Paris, France, not Paris, Texas, but Paris, Tennessee. Robin with Indivisible Paris in Paris, Tennessee, which I looked up does have an Eiffel Tower. You can go visit it in Paris, Tennessee, and you could also go visit the Indivisible group in Paris, Tennessee. Thanks, Robin. Teresa with Indivisible Kitsap Veterans in Bremerton, Washington. And then Leah, I got to save one for the end because special place in our heart for this place. Indivisible Abroad in Edinburgh, in Scotland. I love Edinburgh. Leah went to school in Scotland for a couple years, so we did a trip out there, gosh, a decade plus ago. Fell in love with the place. But Eli, welcome. I appreciate you representing Indivisible all across the world out there in Edinburgh. So, Leah, do you want to take us away with news of the day? I believe there were some files released.
Yeah. So, who is following the latest absolutely bananas series of events on the Epstein files? I am not going to try to recap all of this. I know folks are tracking much of what's happening, but I do want to give you just a quick update on the state of play on the discharge petition in the House. As folks are aware, the House has been out of session for a historic record-breaking length of time, all so that Mike Johnson can stop the campaign to get a discharge petition, to get legislation on the floor, to force DOJ to release the Epstein files. Also, he can prevent that from getting to the 218 votes that were needed. He has literally been refusing to swear in Representative, thank goodness, Grijalva from Arizona, who was elected nearly 2 months ago, has been refusing to swear in, has been keeping the House out of session specifically to avoid this happening. They have now admitted defeat, allowed or sworn her in. The discharge petition has reached 218 signatures. That means that it triggers within a week a vote on the House floor. That is now planned to move forward for next week on the House floor. So I know a bunch of people have kept the heat on locally, have been making calls, have been getting up billboards, have been creating pressure, writing in your letters, have been creating the kind of surround sound pressure on electeds that ensured that we could actually get to this outcome, and that hopefully will get us to the biggest possible vote, bipartisan vote, to release these files when it comes up. That's going to be our focus over the next week, is really trying to push for as big a vote in the House as possible so that you get a bipartisan rebuke of the Trump administration's very obvious, very scandalous cover-up here, and that you generate as much pressure as possible as it heads to the Senate on Senator Thune or Majority Leader Thune and on Republicans to bring this up for a vote. So incredible work to get to this point, and we got to keep the heat up. We've got to keep this in the energy in the news. As folks, you've heard us talk about this before. This is about Donald Trump. It is very obviously about Donald Trump. The latest leaks make that profoundly clear. And also, it is about a broader culture of impunity in which there is one set of rules for the wealthy and powerful and one set of rules for everyone else. And the wealthy and powerful can get away with incredibly horrifying stuff to the rest of us. And so we've got to keep it going. We got to keep the pressure up. And we've also got to link this to the broader story that we are telling, which is that we actually deserve a system of justice that holds everyone accountable. We deserve that kind of accountability from our elites, Donald Trump on down.
How likely do you think it is that the Republicans fracture on this next week, Leah?
Oh, very likely, very likely. I
Yeah.
mean, the Republican leaders, part of the reason they have been resisting this discharge petition for so long is because they understand that if it actually comes to an up or down vote, they're going to lose a lot of people. They're going to lose a lot. Oh, they think they're going to lose a lot of people, and we think we can get that number up quite a bit because this is not a nice vote to have to take if you are a swing district representative. Okay, so we want to push as many folks as possible onto our side to generate more momentum here.
And so it passes the House next week.
Yes.
Then it goes to the Senate. It requires 60 votes to pass the
60,
Senate.
yes.
So then what do we do? Then what do we do with 60 votes in the Senate?
What do we do with 60 votes in the Senate?
Yeah, how do we get there?
Well, we put more pressure on more Republicans.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Because the Republicans themselves are scared about this. They're hearing from their own constituents
Yes.
that their constituents want it to be released. So this is a really useful issue to fracture the Republican rank and file members from the regime.
Yep.
And the Democrats are 100% aligned. Is there any holdout?
There's no holdout.
So the Democrats are.
I mean, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
an issue in which there's a lot of division on our side. We want to see,
That's right.
we want all of the information. We want to know what the administration is hiding. We want the people who are responsible for this grave series of injustices held accountable.
That's right. Okay. Well, great. This is a good development, and props to everybody who is pushing it forward. And trying to bring justice to the victims and make sure that the folks who are accountable or who are responsible are held accountable. So maybe we'll see some actual progress on this finally. What's scary to me is that the stuff that we saw released over the last 24 hours is not the stuff they're even trying to hide. This is not the mother lode of releases. The stuff they are trying to hide is even
Well, this
worse.
stuff is from the Epstein estate.
That's
This
right,
is really
that's
the
right.
cache of emails from the Epstein estate,
Yeah.
which is not the same thing as the Justice Department files.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Okay, so more to come. I'm here to talk as quickly as we can before we get to Q&A about what's happened in the last week in congressional politics. After the last What's the Plan, we were riding high, y'all. We were riding high. Come on, do you remember that What's the Plan? It was only a week ago. It was only a week ago. And we had pulled off the largest protest in American history. The public was rightfully blaming Trump for the shutdown. The Dem approval ratings were suddenly ticking up. They were ticking up because the Dems were fighting back, and we were just thrilled. We turned out massive numbers for what was the best election night, God, Leah, I would say in at least a decade, maybe more last Tuesday. We were just stomped them in Mississippi. We stomped them in Georgia, New Jersey, and Virginia, and California. Like everywhere the regime was on the ballot, we just totally took them out electorally. It was an incredible showing. And Trump himself, do y'all remember this? I know it feels like years ago, but last week, Trump himself, after the election, he was saying, damn it, it's this damn shutdown that's causing us to lose. And you Republicans in Congress, you need to figure out how to stop this because this is hurting us politically. So the Republicans were fracturing. The frontliners in the House, they were looking for a deal to cut to get out of this because they were being blamed for raising people's healthcare costs and for continuing to shut down the government, and that was not good for them. That's where we were literally 1 week ago today, right? That's where we were a week ago today. And then on Sunday, the Senate Democrats surrendered. And if you felt a sense of whiplash, trust me, that was felt all across the ecosystem. This was not like the lefty activist class. This wasn't just me and Leah. This wasn't just Indivisible groups. This was third way. This was moderate senators. This was moderate members of the House. This was people who traditionally are very small c conservative in their tactics. They were shocked that the Democrats in the Senate just suddenly surrendered. And I'm using the word surrender intentionally. Look, politics is about making sausage, and you're never going to get everything you want. It's going to be kind of a messy process. It's reasonable to think, well, what if Democrats could get something out of this, if not everything? They got nothing, y'all. They got nothing. This was the longest shutdown in history, and it caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. And it was on the verge of producing the results that we were all seeking, an extension of these ACA tax subsidies so that healthcare costs weren't so catastrophic for folks around the country. And what did they get? They got a promise for an ACA vote that Republicans are already saying they're going to kill. It was an unconditional surrender. And I think we need to understand that so that we understand where we go next. And I will say, if you saw me in any media outlet right afterwards, probably you saw my first response was rage. I was very upset, but I've settled into resolve. I've settled into resolve because here's what I'd say where I am. We have spent the last year trying to convince Democratic leadership and this party broadly to unify and fight back against a regime that is escalating its attacks on us. It is zip tying children in Chicago apartment buildings and tearing them from their homes. It's invading and occupying American cities. It's terrorizing communities. This is an authoritarian regime that is menacing our democracy all across the country. And in this fight against the regime, we've had a lot of awesome partners. Democratic electeds who have just been incredible from the get-go. Folks like Maxwell Frost and Jamie Raskin and Chris Van Hollen and Chris Murphy and AOC and Bernie and JB Pritzker. Newsom is on the offense. We've had a lot of good leaders in the Democratic Party who are on our side. But after a year of pushing to unify this caucus, the Democratic caucus against the regime, what we saw this weekend is the Democratic congressional leadership and many of the members who prop them up are either incapable or unwilling to engage in the kind of sustained opposition that's necessary. They simply put, they do not believe that this is a crisis moment that calls for more. And I'm done trying to convince them, y'all. We have primary season coming up, and it's time to demand a party that fights, and that's what primaries are for. So I will say I'm most interested in senators and representatives up for reelection in safe blue states and districts. I don't think we should primary every Democrat. I think that's a waste of energy. I don't think that's strategic. But by winning several open and contested primaries and by replacing some of these do nothing Democrats with fighters in safe seats and safe states, we can actually meaningfully reorient the party. Like that's what's on the table right now ahead of us in the primaries. And we know where we're headed over the next year, y'all. This regime understands a blue wave is building. They saw what happened last Tuesday. They fully intend to try to steal the midterms even after the blue wave. That's where I believe we're headed. And the question is, do we have a party that's ready to fight back in that moment or don't we? Now, I will say this is my assessment. This is Leah's assessment. Indivisible is not the Ezra and Leah operation. This is a movement organization, and we don't call the shots unilaterally. So what we've started as of this week is a collaboration with Indivisible groups on this project. So yesterday we met with a couple thousand Indivisible group leaders to talk about the contours of what a primary program should look like. This morning, literally this morning, we sent a survey to Indivisible group leaders. So if you're on this and you're not an Indivisible group leader, but you're a member of an Indivisible group, you might be hearing from leadership there soon. We sent out a survey to Indivisible group leaders to do a landscape analysis of where the local Indivisible groups are, how they're thinking about primaries, how they want to be engaged, how they want to engage. We're going to follow this movement-wide survey up with some district-specific and state-specific conversations. That's where we are. We're taking this seriously. We're trying to implement a methodical process, but I hope we are able to accomplish something real together. We're going to demand a party that needs that we're going to demand a party that we need to fight back against this regime. Then we're going to stomp this regime in the midterms, y'all. Win or lose the primaries, we're going to stomp this regime in the midterms. And then we're going to stop this regime from stealing the election. And then we're going to use our newly won power to hold this regime accountable. That's the arc. That's the plan. Leah, anything else on that overall plan before we get to Q&A? I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions. I want to get into it. We'll take them as they come, as per usual. Put your questions in the Q&A, vote for them, and we'll go through. Good deal? Okay, the top question comes from Jasper. We need a coordinated plan to call out the broadcast news media. Please, the broadcast news media outside of PBS has been complicit in its denial of the threat to democracy and actions of the people to confront fascism and authoritarianism. The oblivious sheep of America will not pay attention or engage unless they see the reality of threats and the resistance. We need a coordinated plan so that the unaware public can become more aware and can feel safe in joining the fight to preserve democracy, please. Leah, we talked a lot about the media environment and how we're thinking about this year. Do you want to talk about how we're engaging in this complex media environment?
Yeah, so let's a couple of thoughts, some of which are more tightly related to the question and some of which are a little more adjacent. I think that it is definitely true that we've got a bunch of entities in what we would call the mainstream media that are actively complicit. When you're thinking about CBS, which has been taken over by Trump supporters, when you're thinking about some of the ways that CNN has oriented, when you're thinking about the Washington Post or the LA Times, you have got a bunch of mainstream media entities that are kind of under the active control of Trump allies. You have also a bunch that are simply quite risk averse, right? They don't want to get sued for $1 zillion. They don't want to have their next regulatory ask of the administration dismissed. They are trying to navigate within whatever. They're complicit. They are enablers. That is a very big problem. We are still getting quite a lot of good national coverage via a bunch of these places. And I think this is important because I've seen a little bit of like defeatism around we can't possibly get our message out. Y'all, when we did No Kings 1 and 2, the message got out. It was incredible. Like we actually got really extraordinary coverage in a lot of these places. There were a few disappointments. The New York Times, terrible job of covering it. But when we went through and looked at like the regional coverage that we were getting and the places that actually reach people, it was really, really good. And so I wanna like create a little bit of a little check on that because I think people can get a little too defeatist pretty fast. Um, Second thing on this is when we're talking about how do we reach people who are not already with us, I feel so much more energy on around reaching people who actually don't engage with traditional mainstream news to begin with.
That's right.
Because fundamentally, we're doing great numbers with people who really regularly follow political news. Like
Yeah.
if you look at the split in 2024 or any time since then, we're actually doing really well with people who regularly pay a lot of attention and consume news. It's the people who are checked out of politics because they don't think it matters. They think both parties suck. They think the system is corrupt, and they are watching, they are like on Mom Talk. They are doing, they are streaming or they're on Twitch. Like they are not actually engaging with political content. So I think that like what I feel a lot more energy around is not necessarily like browbeating some of the mainstream entities, and particularly the ones that are actively in Trump's pocket. It is around strategies that reach people who are in places that are apolitical, either online or in person, to break through with our message. What else? What else you got there? I mean, we could go on. We could talk about this the entire time.
We
So
talk about it a lot. I 1,000% agree with your basic orientation that like folks who watch MSNBC or CNN know what we're doing. They know what we're doing. And this is one of the reasons why earlier this year we made a pretty big pivot into create the creator world, the influencer world, as sometimes people call it. So you will have seen me and Leah and other members of the Indivisible team talking a lot more to folks like The Contrarian or Aaron Parnas or Brian Tyler Cohen or Politics Girl, Lee McGowan, or other major influencers and creators who are reaching audiences that don't tune into MSNBC, don't tune into CNN. And I do think this is a key tactic going forward, that if you're relying on the New York Times to build your people-powered movement against the regime, you're going to fail. And you're not going to browbeat the New York Times into helping you build that movement. But what I've heard from the creator space is the best days that they have had this year have been these three: hands off, No Kings 1, and No Kings 2. And that's because if you get past the gatekeepers who are deciding who writes the headlines for the New York Times, normal people who are consuming content on Instagram or on TikTok or elsewhere on social media, they want this content. And you know what? We're producing it, y'all. We're out there.
That's you.
That's you. Together, we are producing it. We are showing that the opposition to the regime is real. And the creators are like, yeah. Give us more of that. We want more of that. We want to be plugged in. Midas, incredible partner throughout this year, actually showing it. They do it in part because they're pro-democracy and in part because their numbers go up when they cover the stuff that is happening that we're putting on. So I think there's a mutually beneficial relationship between the pro-democracy movement and these new creators, because together we're reaching people who wouldn't otherwise be reached, and we're both benefiting from it. Yeah. Question from Gene. I agree with Dim's Win Media that says Democrats actually won the shutdown fight, and we will squander victory if we don't take credit for it. Although we didn't get the healthcare victory, it's still possible to get more people represented by Republicans demanded. Okay, so I'm going to read the quote directly. The only way Dems lose is if we tell the country we lost. Democrats fought the good fight. Democrats set the national agenda, and Democrats exposed Trump's weak hand. Democrats forced a public reckoning on healthcare costs. Democrats walked out with more leverage than they walked in with. And more importantly, Democrats showed the country exactly what they stand for. That's not defeat, that's victory. And now it's time to claim it. I appreciate you bringing it up. I'm glad we're having the discussion because I do think it's important that we have a full discussion. Leah, thoughts
Yeah.
about where we stand afterwards and what the appropriate response to how this went down is?
Yeah. So I want to hold two things at the same time. The first is that it is 100% possible to be crystal clear that we went into this shutdown with an opponent who approached every single step of the way with sociopathic cruelty for the American people, right? Like their basic orientation was let's cause as much pain as possible to innocent people over and above in order to avoid conceding anything on the healthcare crisis that we have created. So, like, we can actually continue to win and push on that story as we have this conversation about the Democratic Party. There is no tension there. What I think is really important for us to like internalize at a very deep level is that what happened here is the administration said, we're not going to give anything and we're going to cause an enormous amount of harm to innocent people until you fold. And the lesson that they take from their success here is that they can successfully get their way again by causing more harm or threatening more harm to innocent people. And that is a profoundly dangerous principle precedent to set because they will absolutely do it again. And they will find new and creative ways to put you in that situation where they are threatening to harm innocent people because they know they have seen what happens next and they've seen that they can win by doing it.
Unfortunately, I worry that the Epstein files coming out and them feeling more threatened. Trump is like a cornered animal. He lashes out. Like that's what he does when he feels like he's under threat. And I worry one of the lessons he's gotten is that if he lashes out sufficiently, the Dems will just give him what he wants to stop the pain. Um, it is not a good situation to be in, y'all. This is not something we relish. We would prefer that we not have an autocrat who just intentionally will cause harm to the country. And yet we do. And so then the question is, how do we best organize against it? I think this is related somewhat, Leah, to the next question. And so I think maybe we tie them together because I think there's more we could say on this, but I want to get to Marshall's question because you and I have talked about
Yeah.
this a lot. But Marshall asks, is replacing Chuck Schumer at the Democratic head of the Senate a good use of our energies at this time? And a version of this question, just to expand it a little bit, Marshall, apologies, is like, should we we have a fascist regime that's causing harm right now. My God, they are doing so much damage. Should we really be talking about how Democrats are failing us, given that the Democrats, flawed as they might be, they're the team that is fighting back? Shouldn't we just be rallying behind them, not criticizing them, and just focusing on the regime? I'm trying to present the best possible version of this argument. I disagree with it, but to present the best possible version of that argument. What do you say to that, Leah?
Yeah, I would ask people to think about their experience over the last year and how much energy you have spent talking to Democrats to try to move them into a fighting posture. I'm thinking about early on when we were like, why are you backing a bill, the Lake and Riley bill, that is functionally a racial profiling giveaway to the Trump administration? It's going to empower the secret deportation force. Why are we having an argument about how do we orient around crypto? Why can't we just be the party that's against corruption? Why are we having this, like, why do we have to call and beg you to stand up and speak out loudly against the things that are happening, from the attacks in El Salvador to deployments into American cities? All of these things are happening because there's actually like a pretty fundamental difference in strategy between us and some of the folks who are guiding strategy for the Democratic Party. They fundamentally think that a bunch of the things that are happening right now are like unpleasant developments on the path to a pretty normal midterm election that they're going to win. And it's their job to not sully their brand in the meantime by getting into a big fight with Donald Trump about these pieces. That is honestly the analysis that you get when you dig in deep with key consultants and people in this party. And until we actually like meaningfully shift that calculation amongst enough people who are in power and amongst enough electeds that you have the center of gravity with us, we're going to have these fights over and over and over and over again. And that is also divisive and hard and complicated, right? And so when we talk about why is it worth your time if you're in a place where there are the right conditions to get involved in a primary, it's about changing who is the actual person making those decisions so that you have somebody waking up every day who agrees with you, who shares your instincts, and who is thinking, how do I fight back? As opposed to somebody who is trying to do the bare minimum to not get yelled at.
Yeah. I think for me, There are a couple things, and I agree obviously with everything Leah said. A couple things are dominant in my mind for this question of like, why focus on this at all right now? And the answer for me comes down to we're talking a lot to the authoritarian experts around the country about how do democracies devolve into authoritarianism. These are folks we've had Erica Chenoweth on before, Maria Stefan we worked with on anti-authoritarian training and strategic noncompliance. And one of the things that they focus on is how regimes that are starting to consolidate power use elections as the hinge point. Big national elections are the time when they assert their power and they try to steal an election, even when there's popular backlash. So, a lot of our strategic thinking right now is around how do we prevent that inevitability in the midterms next year? And part of that is we just electorally, we do turnout like we did last week. That is part of it. But what we know is that's not going to be enough. That there is going to be an attempt by the regime to subvert the results, to prevent us from actually taking control of the House of Representatives and maybe the Senate. And one of the key findings from the anti-authoritarian experts is it really matters what kind of party you have in that moment. If you have an opposition party whose orientation is, oh yeah, we're fighting back. This is an authoritarian regime. We are going to use all of our leverage. We are willing to make hard political sacrifices in order to make that happen. And instinctually, we're going back against them. Then you're in one position. You're more likely to win. And you have a party that's fractured about what the reality is and what the strategies ought to be. It's going to be harder to save the country's democracy. And so when I think about this current moment, the question is, can you demand a better party while also winning the midterms? And I believe they're not in conflict. I actually believe it helps us to have a party that people can believe in. I think Chuck Schumer is the least popular political figure in the country. That's not debated. That is a political reality. We are headed into a midterms where we're trying to take the Senate, and the person who stands to benefit politically the most if we do so is the least popular political figure in the country. Ask yourself, as we try to win in a Michigan or a Maine or a Georgia or a Texas, do you think we are more likely to take those states for the Senate if Chuck Schumer is at the helm, if he is the one leading us? Or do you think we are less likely? Now, as I said earlier, after the primaries is the general election. If we lose every single primary, we're going to rally around the Democrats. But when I look to safe Democratic states, a state like Delaware, a state like Rhode Island, a state like Virginia, and I see senators there who quietly oppose a unified opposition, I don't think there's any conflict between demanding fight back Democrats in the first 6 months of next year in those states and then going on to stomp the regime in swing states and districts later in the year. And in fact, if we successfully elect a few more fight back Democrats, we'll be able to say this isn't the old failed Democratic Party. This isn't the version of the Democratic Party that you've come to distrust, voters. This is a new party with X, Y, and Z new leaders who you can be excited to show up for. That's the version of the party that I want to be cheering into the midterms next year. I think it helps us politically. Think it helps us on politics or on policy. And I think it's going to help us prevent the election from being stolen at the end of next year. I recognize that's a judgment call. But this is where we come out, and we're going to be working with indivisible leaders. And for those who are aligned, we'll work with them, again, predominantly in safe districts and safe states to build the kind of democratic fighting party that we want to see.
I agree with all that. I want to say 2 points.
Great.
But like,
We talk about this a lot. Okay.
Look, I have been every week we get questions about the Democratic brand, the Democratic messaging. How can Democrats break out of the like general bad vibes miasma of this moment? Did I pronounce that right? I don't know if I pronounced. Okay. And it's like a source of a lot of strain and tension for everyone in the pro-democracy movement. And we spend a lot of time like maybe this policy, maybe that policy. Yeah. I would gently submit that one of the fastest ways that you can signal that it is a new day in the Democratic Party is replacing the guy with a 17% approval rating, who is not a strong communicator, who is generally synonymous with feckless leadership, and who is representative of a broader challenge with gerontocracy in the Democratic Party, with a new person. That is a very fast move you can make that shifts the brand of the Democratic Party in a tangible way that shows that what we have control over right now, we are changing. And so that's like just a very simple realpolitik argument for why this makes sense right now. The other like general point that I would really pull out of Ezra's note there is like we're coming off an election that we lost. Okay, in 2024, not enough people liked the Democratic Party to successfully get us into national office in places. It is good to have narratives that suggest to the people who are not paying as much attention that things are changing within the Democratic Party in a way that might give them hope, might get them to take a second look, might let them to think, hey, maybe it's something, maybe this is it for me. Maybe it's like actually a source of some real potential for change. And so I would really encourage people to not see it as like, these are two things that are in zero sum tension with each other. No one's gonna lie to you. There are tensions. Primaries can be challenging. They can create conflict. Sometimes we have some like lasting challenges from them. That is real. And we're not gonna downplay that. But I think we're also like approaching this from a little bit of a fear-based consensus as opposed to thinking about what are the upsides of meaningfully rebranding the Democratic Party when it's desperately in need of that rebrand.
This is why Leah is one of the greatest strategic minds in the Democratic ecosystem right now, and we all listen to her and take notes. One thing that this conversation is driving home to me, Leah, is I love talking about it, but I think we should probably produce some paper on this. And so maybe some Q&A on like, hey, here's how we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it might be useful for having your own conversations back home or with your Indivisible group. More to come on this. This is not the last time we will be talking. And I'm sure as there's one version of this conversation I will say that is kind of like philosophical and hypothetical and strategic at a high level, which is our primary is good. How should we engage? And then it becomes very specific, which is this member in a safe seat who votes with Republicans too much and who their constituents are aligned against? Is that a good target? And should we be supporting the challenger? And I think it'll focus the mind some once we identify where those seats are. Okay, more to come, more to come, more to come. We're going to go to Vidisha's question. Can our next mass mobilization be called No Cowards and focus on corporate weak Democrats, Republican enablers like Squeaker Johnson and I like Squeaker Johnson. I like it. And SCOTUS to put pressure on them.
You know, it's a great idea. And I really like the idea of broadening the lens from just kind of just Trump or just the billionaires to the broader ecosystem of enablers. I cannot commit to rebranding anything right now, but I think it's like a really great suggestion for either like a core theme of a future mobilization or some kind of accompanying campaign. Obviously, you know, a bunch of our strategy right now is about how are we going after some of those enablers. I want to note, I've seen some chatter about this in the chat. We are going to be launching next week our partnership within the We Ain't Buying It campaign, which is an action around some core enablers of the administration and some folks who've been obeying in advance the Trump administration around Black Friday, where we're going to be asking people to not do your Christmas gift shopping at Target on Black Friday. Don't get your Christmas tree from Home Depot. Don't shop with Amazon on Cyber Monday. Send a message to folks that you want to see them stop enabling the Trump administration. So we're going to be moving in that direction of testing some new campaigns around specific enablers of the administration. So we're very on board. I can't commit to a specific messaging mobilization here right now, but we're with you on the theory.
Can I shout out the Indivisible groups in LA as well, who yesterday and today are protesting in person at the Spotify headquarters in Los Angeles to again put pressure on Spotify for running ICE recruitment ads on Spotify. We are boycotting Spotify. Their Working Families Party and Move On and others are also throwing in on the boycott to try to push them to stop running recruitment ads for America's secret police force that is terrorizing communities. I do think it's very important that we flex our power, not just as constituents, but as consumers in this moment, because there are a lot of corporations out there that don't want to get involved in quote unquote politics, but fundamentally look at their bottom line and say, no, we need to do this because this is the smart thing. And our customers are getting pissed off. +1, everything Leah said, and also check out the Spotify campaign. Have had several friends say, actually, it was surprisingly easy to move my playlist over to X other service. So check it out. Karen asks, if the filibuster was to be voted out right now, as Trump wanted, what would prevent him from pressing Republicans into passing a series of measures that would essentially make him a dictator? This was noted by Heather Cox Richardson's newsletter on Tuesday as the reason Trump wanted the filibuster eliminated. Love talking about the filibuster. You want me to? I'm happy to.
The first part, which is just like, I think we should be real that in the long term, the filibuster is a fundamentally conservative tool. Okay, because Republicans actually have currently got the rules set up so that they can advance basically their entire agenda without without care for the filibuster. They can use reconciliation to give away massive tax cuts for the rich. They can use Supreme Court. They've adjusted so that they can get Supreme Court justices on the court with 50 votes. The Supreme Court is then doing all of the unpopular stuff that they want to see done for them. They are doing fine with the filibuster intact right now. And so when we talk about a situation where they get rid of the filibuster, we should be clear this is both quite dangerous, there's an enormous amount of risk there, and also fundamentally, it is a tool designed to prevent social change that that is actually going to be in the way for the long term as well.
Yep. I mean, I think you should ask yourself, do you want the Supreme Court reformed and expanded? Do you want the Voting Rights Act reinstated? Do you want gerrymandering made illegal? Do you want to get money out of politics? Do you want DC statehood and Puerto Rico self-determination? Do you want any of the kind of democracy reforms that are necessary to prevent a future Trump? If you want any of those things, none of them are possible without eliminating the filibuster ultimately. And then you have to ask yourself the question, why haven't the Republicans eliminated it yet? And the answer is the Republican Party exists to deregulate and to cut taxes for billionaires primarily. And they are able to do that through the reconciliation process that does not require them to get rid of the filibuster. So if you're wondering why hasn't John Thune committed to this? Why is the Republican pushback in the Senate? The answer is they say, well, we can basically do everything we already want to do without eliminating the filibuster. We don't want to open up the pathway for Democrats to pass their own legislation when they get back power. So I don't buy that as an important strategic imperative that we prevent the Republicans from doing it. I don't think they're going to do it. And I think ultimately, if we're going to be successful, we're going to have to push for filibuster reform that allows us to protect the democracy. Laura asks, if Schumer does indeed step down, in your mind, who is there to replace him? This is a great topic of conversation too. I have my thoughts. Leah, do you have your thoughts?
Yeah, so the short answer is nobody has stepped forward right now. Like as a potential challenger or as somebody who is meaningfully saying, I would like to do this instead of you. Brian Schatz, senator from Hawaii, is widely considered to be, and who's the whip right now, is widely
Not whip,
not
Durbin's the whip. He's right under him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is widely considered to be the successor to Schumer on some kind of time horizon. There are a number of folks whose names have gotten tossed around during, kind of like who are the kinds of people who have like the strategic orientation that is called for in this moment. Do you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, Schatz is fine. Like Schatz is very popular in Hawaii. He is a progressive. He's also somebody who's very aligned with Schumer. He's basically being groomed to be Schumer's successor. He voted for the surrender back in March. He was not one of the ones who voted for the surrender this time, but neither was Schumer. So basically, leadership kind of stuck together here. If you're looking for somebody who has our orientation, who believes that this is a crisis moment and is fighting back as if it's a crisis moment, and these are authoritarians, what you'd be looking at somebody like a Chris Murphy, somebody like a Chris Van Hollen, yes, Merkley or a Warren or a Bernie, they're all such progressives. Frankly, it'll be hard for them to get the votes in the caucus. But in my mind, you don't want to just replace Schumer with somebody who's going to do exactly what Schumer did. You want to replace Schumer with somebody who believes it's a crisis. So that's why my mind goes to somebody like a Chris Murphy or Chris Van Hollen. I think what you are looking for in this moment, though, right now, is not the person who will become the new leader to step up and say, I'm the new leader, because ultimately they've got to get the votes of the caucus and they can't alienate the other voters in the caucus. So what you're looking for is folks who will not be the new leader stepping up and saying, we need a new leader. Schumer has served as much as he can, and now we need to rally around somebody else, and maybe they name a few people. But as we look forward right now into how do we push Schumer in the direction of accepting that it's time to resign and allow for new leadership, I'm particularly interested in those senators who are up for re-election this term.
So one thing I'm just going to add on this is like, I think we've gotten a bunch of questions on like, what are the mechanics? How does this work? I think it's possible to get a little too three-dimensional chess about this.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to have the secret inside organizing strategy. Yeah. What we are going to do is tell our Democratic representatives what we want to see and let them figure it out. Like that's actually our job, is to say, at the highest level, this is the moment to call for new leadership. And apply pressure and let them start to work through what is that going to look like.
But this is why I think it's important to look at, especially the Democrats who are up for re-election, because we can put particular pressure on a John Hickenlooper in Colorado, or a Chris Coons in Delaware, or a Mark Warner in Virginia, or a Jack Reed in Rhode Island, or for that matter, a Markey in Massachusetts, or a Merkley in Oregon. They're great progressives who are up for re-election. Some senator needs to be the first to say publicly, we need new leaders. We need this before the midterms. It's time for Schumer to step down from leadership. And until we have that, there's not going to be a successor. There needs to be momentum, and somebody needs to be the first. So I would encourage you, if you've got a Democratic senator, to ask them to be the first. They don't have to be the one taking over, but they have to be the one to say, this is strategically in our interest, and it is in fact imperative that we make this shift before the midterms. And props to folks like Move On who have come out in support of this. Props to all of the House members. Ro Khanna was first, but there were many others, Pramila Jayapal and maybe a dozen or so other House members who have come out, and many more organizations are now starting to build up. I will remind people, when we came out, Indivisible, we took an emergency vote, and we came out for Schumer back in March. When we took an emergency vote back in March, we were the only organization that called on Schumer to step down when he surrendered last time. Now we are one of many. Now there are multiple members of the House who are stepping out. So things are different now. Momentum is building, and it's our job to continue building the momentum. But that's up to all of us to do. So I would highly encourage folks, if you've got a Democratic senator, make this ask. It will be helpful, and you'll see more action from Indivisible on this front pretty soon. Okay, Leslie from Neponset Valley Progressives, an Indivisible group in the Boston area. Speaking of Markey, there you go. My question concerns your recommended strategy for the primaries. Last week, you said during the primaries we should support, I'm assuming, progressive candidates who are fighters, and then in the general election, vote for the Democratic nominees, whoever they are. Given that our voter turnout is lower during the primaries, and the primary voters in a Democratic primary tend to be more ardent members of the area, don't progressives risk fighting for a candidate who cannot win in the general election? I mean, this would come back to me of, like, we're focusing on blue states and blue districts, Leslie. So, for instance, in Massachusetts, you are going to have a Democratic senator. I guarantee you. You're going to have a Democratic senator. In many of the districts, you're going to have a Democratic representative. I don't know if there's a swing district in the entire state of Massachusetts. And the question then comes down to, do you have a Democrat who fights back, or do you have a Democrat who generally just supports the status quo, rolls over and play dead? This is why we're more focused on those in the swing districts. I'm not interested in making John Austin
in the.
Oh, I mean, we're sorry. This is why we're more focused on the blue districts and blue states. We're not interested in endangering the House majority or the Senate majority. That is not the goal. And so I do think it's important for us to separate out. There are fighter Democrats in safe blue seats. That's great. A Markey or a Merkley or a Warren or a Bernie, like those are Democrats who are fighting back, and that's great to see. Then you've got kind of roll over and play dead Democrats in competitive Republican seats. That's understandable. They're trying to maintain their seat. They're taking positions I don't like, and I'm not trying to kick them out of office, because the most important vote they make in my mind is the vote for Senate Majority Leader or the vote for House Speaker. And I accept that. But then you've got this other category of folks, and it is senators or representatives in safe blue seats who act like they are representing vulnerable Republican states or vulnerable districts. And we don't have to accept that, y'all. We don't have to accept that. We can actually ask for fighters in the deep blue seats to fight back.
I do also just want to qualify, because I think that we can get a little reductive about like how we're thinking about ideology, as if it's kind of like one spectrum, right? It's like, this is how progressive you are, this is how moderate you are, and everybody falls on this spectrum. I think what we are consistently seeing is that it's kind of like two axes, right? Here's like kind of your left to right axes, and here's like how much you think this is an emergency that requires that you fight with every tool that you've got, with all the leverage that you've got, that we're like in a literal constitutional democratic crisis. And not everybody who agrees with me, where I personally would put myself on ideology, is in the like crisis box. And not everybody, and there are moderates who are like all the way up there on crisis that we are throwing in with right now, right? Like, we don't always align with Chris Murphy on policy. But he's out there being like, oh, ringing every possible alarm bell about the moment we're in, and that's great. And so we're working together.
That's right.
Like so there's a little bit of a little reductiveness that I think we can get tied up in here when what we're actually asking about is like, what does it take to have a Democratic Party of fighters? And now I will note some of the ways that you like assess that, they're gonna track a little bit more closely to ideology, right? Like, does this person take corporate PAC money? Does this person support expanding the Supreme Court? These are like general indicators that somebody kind of knows what's up and is prepared to use their leverage. It's not inherently ideological, though. It's actually about what's their analysis of power.
Mm-hmm. It's a really, really good point to come back to. Yeah, thank you for that. Becky asks, Becky with Indivisible Denver Action, many of us are expecting the administration to ramp up surveillance of activist groups. Please give an update on security, including the data in every action, which is one of the tools many Indivisible groups use to track their membership. Leah,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about the security in the lead up to and then aftermath of No Kings 2, which was like the last time we were talking about this a whole bunch?
Yeah, so this has been a pretty strange couple of months, just candidly. I mean, on many fronts, but I would say the basic trajectory that we have experienced from the national level is that all of us were expecting a pretty massive onslaught of escalatory repressive action, surveillance, acts by the federal government, particularly in the wake of the Kirk assassination. And they certainly threatened those things and have set some of that in motion as it relates to other targets. And obviously launched kind of a full court press to define the No Kings protests as anti-American, extremist, et cetera, in advance of the protests. And then we got 7 million people out, all peacefully, joyfully telling this administration to
Fuck off.
you said it, not me. And things trailed off a little bit, and it's a little bit unclear to us exactly how much of that was that the frame and the fact that we were able to do this extraordinary and historic act of mobilization made it harder for them to kind of like immediately escalate with their repression agenda, or how much they were frankly just distracted by the shutdown and the people who are normally in charge of the repression were just trying to like hold some various things together within the federal government. I think we'll find out a little bit more about that in the immediate future. But there's been like less of the regular drip of threats that we have been seeing coming in before that, in terms of like them briefing various newspapers about how they're going to come after us, et cetera, et cetera. So that's like kind of the weird trajectory of this year. And also we are always attuned to the risk of repressive action, because this is fundamentally an administration that is enacting the authoritarian playbook. And a big part of that is cracking down on civil society and closing out space for dissent. So overall trajectory is like we remain very concerned about it. And also, I think by virtue of having branded really clearly the No Kings protests, we've created some space for like pushing back on some of the narratives that they have tried to propagate. Yep. Now, in terms of like data and surveillance pieces of this, we have, I don't know if I have an update to say. Like, we take data security extremely seriously. Every action mobilized, the core companies that we work with, they do as well. The companies that, hold data for the progressive ecosystem understand that their business model depends on being like very, very careful with the data that they have, as do we. We take it incredibly seriously. And also, and you've heard me say this before, I'm a broken record on it. Fundamentally, what we are doing is legal and American and in line with American values. And while we're not gonna, while we take data security seriously, we're also organizing in the open. We're talking to you about our strategy. When we call for the next protest, we're gonna do it publicly, and we're gonna loudly be proud of what we're doing, and we're all gonna gather in person and say we're not afraid, right? Because fundamentally, their entire repression agenda is about trying to get people to back down preemptively. And the way that we push back against that is to repeatedly assert and claim that space and say that we're not afraid at all about what we are doing, because we have no reason to be afraid, because we are exercising our First Amendment rights.
Hell yeah, Leah. Okay, Kathleen's question. Oh, I loved it.
Wait, I actually do want to, just while I'm on the general topic of a authoritarian administration going after its political opponents, I do think it's really important to note that earlier today, there was a really disappointing development in the case of Rep. LaMonica McIver of New Jersey.
For folks who have not been following this is one of the first charges, I believe the first member of Congress who has been charged by the administration with completely baseless charges. She was at a protest of an ICE facility in New Jersey. It was the same one where Mayor Rosbraka was arrested. And she was charged with assault completely baselessly. There's a video. It makes no sense at all. It is just classic Stephen Miller style intended intimidation of political opponents. It is notable, of course, that the first folks that they go after are women of color and Black women. She has been fighting these charges. They are completely baseless. They filed a motion to have the charges dismissed today. It was not sustained. I'm not a lawyer. But
She didn't win
the
first.
case is going to have to continue to go on,
Yeah.
which means that there's a really urgent need for legal support as well. So
Yes.
really want to push people. Like one of the things that we do have to consistently do here is really stand very firmly with the people who are being targeted by this administration for speaking out, for opposing their agenda. If we say we want fighter members of Congress, like the entire topic of this conversation, we got to stand behind them when they are showing up and when they are facing the brunt of the administration and the wrath of the administration for doing so. So if you are not familiar with her, sign up for her email list, donate to legal support, make sure that folks are collectively showing up for the people who are heroes for us.
And look out, we're going to be sending an email out this weekend specifically on this that explains all of it and that points you to donate directly to her to support her legal costs. I think it is really, really important for us to show up for those under threat. She was one of the ones that is just to say again, she was leaning forward more than just about anybody else, and the regime targeted for her. Simple as that. And so, if we're not going to be there for her, then it's going to incentivize other Dems to hold back. And we have a link, I believe, in the chat. It's LaMonica MacGyver.
Yeah, MacGyver.
MacGyver.
Yep.
But again, stay tuned. Emails coming from Indivisible on that as well. Okay. With the goal of ridding, from Kathleen, with the goal of ridding the Democratic Party of all senators who do not call for Schumer to step down, what are we to think if only one or two meet that criteria? Here's one other thing I would say. So we came out immediately after the shutdown with the initial launch of the primary program. One criteria of that will be, are you calling for new leadership? But we should be under no illusion. I think interviews with AOC and Bernie and others have said, yeah, like Schumer sucks. They didn't say that directly. We don't like Schumer, but he's reflective of a broader problem. And I think that's right. So I think as a baseline, we should be getting behind folks who are calling for new leadership, but individual indivisible groups in these states and collectively statewide should be assessing a range of criteria for what they're looking for. So I don't think it's going to be just as simple as, did you call for new leadership? Great. I also think we're in the early stages of getting senators to call Schumer to step down, which is to say 0 of them have. Our best friends haven't. I mean, Warren and Bernie and Markey and Merkley haven't. Is that because you think they're aligned against this? No, it's because this isn't where we are in the process yet. So I think we need to build up the pressure to get the senators to start coming out. I think if we are successful, what you will see is this becomes a dominant feature of competitive primaries across the country. We already see that in open primaries. Candidates in open primaries in places like Michigan and Minnesota and Maine are already coming out saying, oh, no, I'm not going to vote for Chuck Schumer. That's healthy. That's good. That helps build momentum. What we haven't gotten yet is any incumbent senator. And I do think that's going to be a crucial crucial point in the process that may or may not come, but it's only going to come if we push for it.
Okay, let's go. Let's try and cover. Let's cover the one about the 2026 election.
Okay, Cynthia asks, I'm very concerned about the 2026 election. We need to ask for hand-voted audit, hand-counted audits everywhere. The tabulating machines are vulnerable.
I love when I get to answer a question by being like, it's worse than you think. But I would expand that a lot. I would say that the administration is currently in the process of trying to rig the election. They are going to be doing that from now until the 2026 election with an eye towards creating enough chaos and swirl and turbulence that they can generate the grounds for legal challenges to try to overturn the results in the places that they do not like the results and to sustain them in the places that they do. This is not an administration that intends to allow a Democratic House or Senate to take office. And they are like actively working to try to prevent try to prevent that from happening right now with stuff like the gerrymandering effort that the Trump administration is doing, but also with executive orders on voting, with pushes to red states to change their voting protocols, all of the above, with threats of dispatching election monitors, all of the above. So we hear the broad concern about election sabotage or election theft. And we're going to be thinking really intentionally and making this a pretty central part of how we orient for the coming year. We've got to work backwards with everything, with all of our thinking around, and for the political program that we do, around what does it take to win the election and what does it take to ensure that the results of the election turn into the people who take office in January 2027.
I mean, Leah is really leading this on our end, but just so you know, this is dominating our strategic thinking. Like, our mind right now is not how do we win the primaries, end of story. Our mind is not even how do we build the turnout necessary for the midterms, end of story, is exactly what Leah just said. Our focus is on January 2027. We get Democrats to take over the House and hopefully Senate and then use that power. Backing up from that, that means we need to protect the election results. Backing up from that, we need to build midterm margins that are very difficult to steal. And then backing up from that, we need to change the Democratic brand, rehabilitate it so that we're going into the midterms with the strongest possible fighting Democratic Party that we can get.
That's right.
And actually, on that note, Leah, that's about 4 o'clock.
That's about 4 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, y'all.
So that's
Thank
the
you.
plan. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next Thursday. Just to put it on your radar, we're not going to do a What's the Plan on Thanksgiving. I'm just alerting you to that now. So you have your Thanksgiving, but next week we will be here.
It would be a what's the plan with our children, like hanging
Oh
out
my
with
gosh,
us.
yes.
So I mean, you might like that briefly, but
Right.
we would.
You think you can't hear Leah now? You're not going to be hearing her when Lila and Zeke are screaming in our room.
Yeah.
But we will see you next week, November 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I appreciate everybody digging into this. This is a little bit more complex than normal. These primary discussions. We're not always going to agree on everything, but I really am proud of this movement to be able to tackle hard things and do big things together. And together we're going to win. And until next week, hope you all stay safe, stay active, and stay pushing for the democracy that we need to see. Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.